So this is the course that I taught long time back in Ireland, and since this is my own course, so I'm publishing this for the first time in YouTube, and hopefully it will be helpful to many students. And here we will learn data structures with C programming. Now the language itself is not important because these data structures are very common in other object oriented languages such as Python, Java, C++, and so on. So understanding the logic behind the data structures or the algorithms is more important than the language in itself. But however, this course is taught using the C programming language. So let's start with very basics. So in this course, usually we used the online compiler, and also you could use code blocks, that is for C++. And we used also, some people used Visual Studios as well, as they were installed in the labs. So we'll start with the very basic types of data structures. So there are two kinds of data structures here. One is built-in data structures which cannot be modified, and then there are user defined data structures that user can define, and as well as, because user can define it, user can also manipulate and modify them. So for example, integer, float, character, pointer, these are all built in data structures, meaning they are these are um, built in, meaning they are built in the C language in itself. These are built in and they cannot be modified much. Right, for example, float, you cannot modify it. You can only declare and initialize a float, you can only declare and initialize an integer, or a character you can only declare and initialize, right? You cannot you cannot you cannot define it. So you cannot, there is given size, and you cannot manipulate that size. Okay, so user defined data structures are arrays, list, and files. Here you can modify and you can manipulate arrays, you can define the size of an array, you can define the size of a list, or you can decide the size of a file. But for character, float, integer, a particular fixed size is given. So when you declare an integer a equals to 10, whatever memory has to be assigned to that integer, it is fixed, right? It is not user defined, you cannot define it. But in an array, you can decide whether it is a 1D array or a 2D array, and that would change the size of that particular array. Or if it is a list, whether it is a linear list such as a stack or a queue, or it is a non-linear list. So this can be decided. It is a non-linear list, which is a tree or a graph. So we'll go through this in later slides. So let's first look at this very simple program. So the first, that this is just a basic statement. Hashtag include stereo.h. This is basically you are including a library, which is standard input output library. So you are using this library in C. Then the main function that we write is the main function, which is returning an integer, and the arguments that it is taking is void, so nothing is passed. Then we are declaring two variables, age1 and age2. The data type is int. Then we are printing on the screen input age of student 1 and scanf. We are taking the age from the user as an age 1, and then in another two statements we are taking the age of student 2 and then return 0. Now anybody, if you can say why it is returning 0. So if you see the second line where it is declared int main void, the return type is integer, and therefore we have to return here some integer. So here it is 0, it could be 1, 2, 3, or anything, right? So what will be the data, what will be the output for this? The output is gonna be, let's say the student 1 age is 20 and student 2 age is 30. So the output is gonna be 20 comma 30. Now what if we are having lots of students. So what if the data is for 10 or 50 students? What are you going to do? Are you going to use these printf and scanf lines statements for 10 students or 15 students? That is not possible, right? So it's not possible. It's going to make a very lengthy code, and we all know that a lengthy code is not a good code. The programming principle, a good programming principle is that the minimum the code is, better the program is, right? Minimum the code is, better the better well written it is, if it is explained in few lines. So what happens when there are 10 to 15 students? Then what will we do? We will use arrays instead of using these print and scanf lines, instead of using this simple program. So let's use an array here. How do we use an array? So basically we said that array is user defined data structure. How do you use an array? How do you declare an array? So again, the way to declare an array is using square brackets, and that is the size of the array. You are defining that I want an array of size 10. Okay, then you are using a basic for loop where you are saying, hey, start from 0 and go until 10, less than 10, and then increment your integer I. Then you are saying, you are taking the age of the students, and you are taking the age of the students for integer 1 and until it is going to be less than 10, because we are doing it for 10 students. Okay, so this is basically writing a C program to display students age for 10 students. So we are basically using a for loop. We are declaring an array which is of int type, int data type, and the size is 10. Then we are creating a for loop where we are asking the user to enter the age of the student. Okay, how do you enter the age of the student using an array? Ampersand students I, where I is 0 and then becomes 1, then becomes 2, then becomes 3, right? Now anybody, if you know what is percentage d and percentage d in printf and print scanf statements, percentage d is basically to denote or to take an integer value, right? Whenever you want to take an integer value, you use percentage d. If you want to take a float value, you use percentage f. If you want to take string value, you use percentage s. Those who are not familiar with C++ code, this is basically the syntax for C or C++ code. Display the contents of an array. So one for loop is to take the student's age from the keyboard, to take the user's age from the user, and the second for loop is to display the contents on the screen. So basically again, for I is less than 0 and then I is less than 10, 10 or students dot length. We know that the students is an array which is declared of int data type, and the size of this array is 10. So of course students dot length becomes 10 I plus plus, and then here you are printing the age of the student as well as the number of the students. So what it's gonna print? It's gonna print age of one student is 20, age of second student is 40, age of third student is 26. So on and so forth. Okay, so arrays basically makes our life easier. So rather than writing 10 print f statements and 10 scanf statements, if we have a large amount of data and we want to print the age of those students, large amount of data, we can use arrays. Okay, so arrays is much better than using a simple int variable. Moving forward, okay, this is just normal, the arrays data structure. How do we declare it in C? So this is a data type. We all know what a data type is. Data type is basically what kind of a structure you are declaring. It's either int or a float. Difference between int and float is, in integer you can have only the whole number, right? Or a natural number. You cannot have a decimal, whereas in float you can have a decimal. String or character, in character you can have any character from A to Z, and in strings you can have a group of characters. So character basically A, B, C, D, these are characters, and when you put them in a group they are known as strings. Okay, now this is the initial, this is the declaration. When you declare an array, you can also assign an array, meaning you cannot just declare, but you are also assigning the elements of an array. So at a 0 position, the element in an array is 35, at 1 position 33, at 2 position 42, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And one must know that an array starts from index position 0. So even if your size is 10, your index position is always 0 for an array, and therefore we say less than 10. We never say less than equal to 10, right? Okay. Write a C program to print students' name with the use of an array and a for loop for 10 students. Now here, before we did an age, so we used integer. Now they are saying to print the student's name, and because name is a string, we can use character or char as a data type, right? So we can use char as a data type. Now C does not have string, and therefore we have to use char. And just one character, basically string is what? A group of characters. So when you give here 10, meaning the name cannot have more than 10 alphabets here, right? So that is what this means, that a name cannot have, student name cannot have more than 10 characters. Okay, moving forward. Now we come to functions in C. So since this is a basic data structure class, so we are starting from a very, people, students who are learning C or C++ for the first time, we are starting from a very, very basics. So where we are teaching functions, where we are teaching data structures and so on. So here, what is basically a function? A function is basically a program that performs a particular task. Okay, and every function, the first the every C program has a main function, right? What is a main function? But it is a basic function that every C program has, and there are certain parts of a function. So for example, a function will always have a return type. Okay, and return type meaning what does that function return? If it does not return anything, then the type is void. In this case, our main function is returning integer value, and main is function basically does something, it performs some task. So for example, here we are saying max num, so we are calling an inbuilt function. Now max num is an inbuilt function declared in C. Okay, no, sorry, this is not. Max is an inbuilt function. Max num we are declaring. Okay, I'll tell you where we are declaring. So this is your function max num, and there are two arguments passed to this function, num1 and num2. Both are returning integer, and this particular function is not returning anything, so function declaration is void. And basically we are comparing two numbers. If num1 is greater than num2, you print num1 is greater, otherwise you print num2 is greater. So normal if and else statements are used, where num1 is greater, print num1 is greater, otherwise print num2 is greater. Now, this is the writing of a function. How do you call a function? A function is useless. Function is performing a task. In this case, function is comparing two numbers. If one number is greater, printing that number is greater. But a function is useless if you're not calling it somewhere, right? So how do you call a function? You simply call the name. But now you see why 2 comma 8, because this max num is accepting two arguments, num1 and num2. Therefore, we have to pass two arguments. So arguments are of data type integer. So if I pass here any character, it's gonna give me an error. If I pass here any decimal, also it's gonna give me an error, because my data type is returning int. My data type is accepting an int value. So here it has to be 2 comma 8, and then return 0. Why return 0? Because max num returns 0, right? So this is function declaration and this is function calling, and these are the arguments that are passed. Okay. Then here I'm write a program to calculate area of a square. We know the area of a square formula is side multiplied by side. So if the side is 10 centimeter, what's the output gonna be using functions? Now let's discuss the maximum and minimum elements in an array. Now an array uh, can be a fixed array, or it can be a non-fixed array. Meaning, if this arr is the name of my array, arr, data type is integer. If I say here 5, that means it is a fixed array of 5 elements. But if I don't write here size and I give elements here, Okay, I don't write here size, then it is a non-fixed array. But another way of writing or declaring a fixed array is giving the name of the elements here. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. Now here this is a size, this array is of size 10, but 10 is not here declared. Okay, it is, they are just the elements are given here. Now what we are basically doing here, we are printing a maximum array, maximum and minimum elements in an array. So if you see out of 5 minus 3 7 6 2 1 8 3 0 4, the maximum is 8 and we know that the minimum is minus 3. So how can we print that? So how do you print that it is a, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna compare each element. Okay, we're gonna compare each element to the element 0, meaning we're gonna compare minus 3 to 5, 7 to 5, 6 to 5, 2 to 5, 1 to 5, 8 to 5, 3 to 5, 0 to 5, and 4 to 5. So we're gonna compare every element to this 5 element at position 0, and if we find that a position, that the element at any position is greater than this particular 5, then what do? Then you assign that element to position 0. Are you getting my point? So we are basically comparing at position 0. We'll compare minus 3 to 5. Minus 3 is smaller than 5. Okay, no problem, go ahead. 7 is smaller than 5. No, 7 is not smaller than 5. Then assign 7 in at the place of 5. So put 7 here and put 5 here. Then go again. 6 is here. Now 7 is here. 6 is smaller than 7. Good. Then 2 is smaller than, then 7 is good. 1 is smaller than 7 is good. 8 is smaller than 7. No, 8 is not smaller than 7. Then replace. Put 8 at the position of your LOC or your index position. Put 8 over there. Put 8 as the first element and then put 5 here, and then do it for the rest of the elements, and this way you can have the max element, right? Similarly you can do the minimum element, just the greater than sign would change to less than sign. Okay, now we will continue with scope of a variable. What is a scope of a variable? Now in a programming language there are two kinds of variable. What is a variable? Variable is basically uh, a holder, right, that holds the value. So it is basically a holder, a data holder, that holds the data, that holds the value. Now there can be local variables or there can be a global variable. Local variables basically are those data holders that are declared inside a program, basically inside a function or inside some if and else block. That is a local variable. It cannot be used anywhere else. It cannot be used beyond that function or beyond that boundary of if and else or beyond that block boundary. But global variables are those variables that can be used anywhere in the program. So local variables are basically declared inside a function, inside a block, and therefore they cannot be used anywhere else. Global variables are declared at the start of your program, and so they can be used uh, in and out of in and out of any function. Now an example would be, if you see here, int a and int b, int a, b, and int c are declared inside the main function, right? So because they are inside the main function, they can only be used inside the main, they cannot be used in any other function. But if you declare them outside your main, then it is a global variables and they can be used in any of the functions. Okay, so if you want a global variable, declare it at the start of your program, just after your stereo.h. But if it is a local variable, then it has to be inside your function. Okay, now we'll do some string operations. So like we said that character is a data type that holds alphabets, right? It does not hold any number. Now there are, for string is basically group of characters is known as a string. And then there are certain functions, for example strcpy, it will copy string 1, copy string 2 to string 1. Okay, so strcpy basically string string 2 is the source and this is the destination. strcat concatenates string 2 to string 1. strlen returns the length of your string. strcmp compares string 1 and string 2. Okay, so if they are same, they are equal, it returns 0. If it is less than 0, meaning s1 is less than s2. If greater than 0, then s1 is greater than s2. So if you want a group of characters, we use percentage s. But if you want a single character, then we use percentage c. So percentage, so like we discussed, percentage d, percentage f. Similarly, here we have percentage c and percentage s. Percentage s, if you see here, they stand for group of characters, whereas percentage c stands for a single character. So this is a basic program where we are declaring three strings. Two are defined uh, and declared and defined with values hello and world. The third string is not defined, meaning is empty string for now. Sizes for all three strings are 12. Then we are copying the string 1 to string 3. So copying string 1 to string 3, and now string 3 is also no more empty and the value in string 3 is going to be hello. We can also concatenate two strings. When we concatenate two strings, we are concatenating string 1, sorry, string 2 to string 1. So string 2 is world and we are concatenating world to hello, so my string 1 becomes now hello world. Then I'm also calculating the length of my string. So after calculating length of my string hello world, the string length will become 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 10 characters. Okay, moving forward, constants in C. So basically for constants we use keyword const, and we use hashtag define. So this is the way, this is basically a syntax in C. And what is basically a constant, meaning giving a fixed value to your um, giving a fixed value to your constant, and your constants cannot change. So once the value is given, a constant cannot change, right? So constant inst length 10. Now length is always gonna be 10, length is not gonna change. So if you want some variables that you don't want to modify, then you declare them as a const. Now let's come to structures in C. We have a struct, and what is basically structures are, they group together, they are similar to class but they are primitive to classes, right? So before classes were declared or designed, C heavily used structure. So basically we are grouping together the similar kind of a, so it's like, how do you structure? You structure birds, you structure animals, you structure human beings. So because birds are all the species that can fly, so you are putting them into category of birds. Animals are all the species that are four legged and uh, let's say, I don't know, carnivore or herbivore, you are putting them into the category of animals. Then there are human beings who are two legged but cannot fly and can be carnivore, herbivore and omnivore all, so you put them into a category of human. So basically categorization, logically grouping the elements of same kind into one group and of different kind into another group, that is basically structure are used for. Okay, how do we declare a struct? Basically struct is declared with a keyword called struct in C. And then here you are declaring char name 25. So in the struct you have to have fields. These are the struct is declared as struct, and then these are the fields. It has a name, it has id, it has age. Similarly, in your main, now you're gonna call the struct. So basically, or sorry, you're gonna create a struct. This is basically struct template, but in a main, you need to have a type of a struct. So you're giving any name. It could be any name, right? And then you are copying a name. So basically, now here in strcpy, in this statement, you are basically assigning name field of struct A as J daily. Then you are assigning ID field of struct sta as this, age field of struct A as 25, and then you are assigning struct A to struct B. Okay, so this is how the structures are used. This is another program where we are using structure. So let's go quickly what we are doing here. So when I was teaching this in the class, I was asking the students to type it out, and then they would type it out and then they would see the output for themselves, so it's not very boring for them. But I'm not doing this now here, so you can do that by yourself. So here we are declaring a struct. We are giving three fields: name, id, age. In the main, we are calling the struct of size. We are creating a struct of size 10, and we are using a for loop to enter the name of the student. And then get s is basically a command, um, or a function in C that basically is used to take the input from the user, and get s is used for taking strings. We cannot use get s for integers, so for id we are using scanf, again percentage d. And then we are using age of the student, again scanf for percentage d for age. And at the end we are using get car. Otherwise your program would just not stay on the screen. So if you want the program to stay on the screen, you have to use get car. So the first loop is to fill in your struct. Second loop is to display the elements inside of your struct. So remember, the struct size is 10, and therefore the loop is less than 10. Less than 10 because index position starts from 0. Okay, now this was just for the assignment. So if you want, you can have a look and you can do it for your own self. Okay, so in the next video I will cover pointers, and that's it. So we'll cover pointers then.